All praise, all glory, all honors most certainly due to the Most High, God of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith, and I count it truly a blessing each and every time that I can come before you to preach the word of God, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's lesson, and the title is The Color of the Ancient Israelites. The color of the ancient Israelites. One of the biggest misrepresentations in human history. One of the greatest lies in the course of human events, or told about the course of human events, is pertaining to God's chosen people and who these people are. Okay? And you can find through scriptures and through history that the people who claim to be the children of Israel, right? They would call themselves Israelis. That is not biblical. What I mean is those people who are saying that are not the children of Israel for real. All right. And that's clear when you look at the scriptures. Again, when you look at archaeology and when you look at history, somebody's perpetrating a fraud. And it has grave implications in regard to his chosen people. We don't know who we are. Another people have taken our identity, proclaimed it. But he said Moses prophesied this would happen. I'm going to start off with Deuteronomy. He prophesied that this would happen. And then I'm going to tell you what the Lord feel about it. This is Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter. In verse 26, he says, Moses writes, I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. That's why you don't know who you are as a people. Israel is a black people that have been scattered into slavery all over this earth. All over this earth. This is Psalms the 83rd division. It says something here. It says, because these are what the enemies of Israel have said. They said, keep not, in verse 1 of Psalms 83, it reads, keep not thy silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. Below thine enemies make a tumult. They hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Let's see what they said. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. Then he says something, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarenes. He goes on to talk about those who would come against God's people to cut them off. Edom, Esau, he was one that was his brother. You know, they were another nation. They were as one who would take him into captivity. And when you really look at this thing, let's go to Revelation. Well, matter of fact, let's go to Obadiah, then we'll go to Revelation. Let's go to Obadiah, then we'll go to Revelation. Because somebody's perpetrating a fraud. This is Obadiah. I'm going to pick it up at verse 10. Obadiah, verse 10. It reads as follows concerning Esau. It says, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee. Thou shalt be cut off forever. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was as one of them. That's what Esau did. Even when you look when Israel went into captivity in the days when Judah, the southern kingdom, went into captivity in the days of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, 586 BC, around that time. Edom encroached into that land and even took some of that land to the point to where when Nehemiah, in the days of Nehemiah and Ezra, when the Judeans went back into the land, right? Cyrus began that process of writing decrees and Artaxerxes. They went into the land, and there was some of that land they were never able to get back. And when the Messiah came on the scene, you had Herod there, right? Who was an Idumean or an Edomite who built upon the temple. Because you had these people who had converted, right? See what you had some people. You had some people who were taken upon a faith, right, or a way of life to a degree. Of course, they got their own spin on it, and then they have gone on to say that they are the actual people. That's a lie. So it says, but thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother in the day that he became a stranger. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of thy distress. And that's what they did. That's what they did. Let's go to Revelation, the book of Revelation. Let's go to the book of Revelation. We're gonna pick it up. Give me 1 second. I want to read before we go. Let's go to. It says something that Edom did. This is Obadiah in verse 13. It says, "Thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity." So you entered into their gates. Okay, you shouldn't have done that. But we want to go to and the Lord hates Esau. But we want to go to Revelation, the second chapter. Revelation, the second chapter. And he says something here. It says, "I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich." Now he's talking to his people when he says this. He says, "I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich." Then he says, "And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan." So you have some people claiming to be the Jew, but they're not. That's what's going on. You have some people perpetrating a fraud. Because if you read this, you read the prophecies, the prophecy said ultimately Israel will be cast into slavery by way of slave ships. Be scattered all over. They be the head, they be the tail, not the head. Their children would be sold into slavery and their wives would be taken from them. That's not what happened to the people who call themselves Israel today. Matter of fact, when I typed in this lesson into the on this streaming site, the title of it, I said the color of the ancient Israelites, it auto-corrected me as an Israelites, and I spelled it correctly. It's not a word. But then when I put Israelis in, that was correct. You cannot find the Israeli in this book because they are not the same people. And so what I want to deal with today is color. Okay? So the question is, what color were the ancient Israelites? We want to start off. I just want to go to Genesis. Because you should understand that the first man was black. Okay? First, you could not have all this variety that you find in the human species if the man was white. Because white, that's a recessive gene. You can get the darkest hue of black and the whitest white from a black person, but you can't do the opposite. Okay? This is, we're going to pick it up in Genesis 42 because we're going to look at we're going to look at the patriarchs. We're going to look at Israelites and find out they were indeed a black people. This is Genesis 42, and we're going to pick it up at verse 6. Genesis 42 and verse 6, because here we see Joseph, who was one of the 12 sons of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. He was sold into slavery. His brothers were jealous. They sold him into bondage, and he ended up in Egypt. Okay, he rose up to be the governor in Egypt during the stressful time of famine, and so, but he was able to save his family, because many years later, when they came into Egypt looking for food, he was there distributing the food because he interpreted the dream. You should know the story. And let's find out what happens when his own brethren, after many years later, are selling him. When they see him, what they say. This is Genesis 42 and verse 6. It says, and Joseph was the governor over the land, and it was that sold all the people of the land. He sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Just like when you read about in Revelation 12, where people was going crazy, talking about that meant the end of the world. What that was talking about, it was talking about the woman, okay, and then you understand that that's talking about Israel because of what you read in Genesis 37. Around Genesis 37, when they make when his 37, when he has the dream, and his mother and father and 11 stars, which represent his other brothers, bowed out unto him, show obeisance unto him. So it was showing that there's gonna come a time when you gonna bow down to Joseph. Okay, and it took place. But let's see what happened here in verse 7. It said, and Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them. So he recognized his brethren. Then it said, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, whence come ye? And they said, from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. How is it possible that they wouldn't recognize their own brother? Okay, now why am I asking this question? Because if Israel is the color that these Israelis, they claiming to be the people, they white, they look white. Okay, what we would in modern terms classify as white. How is it possible that if you look like that in this time in Egypt, you wouldn't be recognized? Because the ancient Egyptians, brothers and sisters, were a black people. Okay, they were a black people. Just to show you that, let's look at something real quick. Okay. So now you see from approximately 1480, a relief in Thebes, Egypt, you see some infantrymen. What color are they? Now there's been whitewashing that's been going on, but they have not whitewashed everything. Here's a relief in the Temple of Ramses. Queen Tai, or Tai, you see how she looks. Thutmose the third. So that's just I want to read something here from Herodotus. Herodotus, the so-called father of history, says concerning the people of ancient Egypt, he traveled there. He said that, the people dwelling there, the Egyptians, Ethiopians, and Libyans, are black color by reason of the burning heat. Sheikh Anta Diop, in African Origin of Civilization, said Herodotus may be mistaken when he reports the customs of a people, when he reasons more or less cleverly to explain a phenomenon incomprehensible in his day. But one must grant that he was at least capable of recognizing the skin color of the inhabitants of countries he has visited. He had to say that because white supremacy is so strong that people didn't want to make many of these racist scholars didn't want to acknowledge that the ancient Egyptians were black, because if they black, that means much of your science, your philosophy, your mathematics, even a lot of your aspects of your religion came from Egypt. This great civilization. They were building things in Egypt they can't build today with modern technology. Some scholars, like you read Black and Thin and other scholars claim that it was these Greek philosophers who went and studied in the mystery schools in Egypt. Gaston Maspero, this Egyptologist, he said by the almost unanimous testimony of ancient historians. See, Herodotus wasn't the only one. They talking about the Egyptians belonged to an African race which first settled in Ethiopia on the Middle Nile. African in the modern sense, we know that these are black people. It says they settled on the Middle Nile in Ethiopia. On the Middle Nile, following the course of the river, they gradually reached the sea. Okay. So we should understand that the ancient Israelites, again, look like Egyptians. That's how Joseph. So Joseph, if you could wrap your head around it, Joseph was just a black man amongst other black men. See, if you go to Nigeria, most black folks right now, they go to Nigeria, they could just blend in. But you can't go to a Scandinavian country and blend in. And that's what it would be like if Joseph looked like the people claiming to be the Israelites today, or the Israelis or the Jews today. How you would stick out, right? So they would know, hey, that's Joseph. Or Joseph. They would know that brother. But no, he spoke differently than them. Maybe he had Egyptian garb on. Years had passed. He just looked like one, and they couldn't even fathom that he would be in power. So he just looked like one black, one Egyptian amongst them. Let's pick up something else here. Let's go to Genesis 41 and pick it up at verse 48. I'm sorry, not 40. Well, 40, actually 45. Genesis 41 and verse 45. It says, and Pharaoh called Joseph's name Sabnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out all over the land of Egypt. So he had a wife, an Egyptian. Then it says something. Verse 50, and unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, he have made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim. For God have caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Ephraim and Manasseh. So wait a minute. He got a wife. He got an Egyptian wife. We saw what the ancient Egyptians look like. So you got 2 black people. Now one is Semitic, one is Hamitic. Okay. But you are what your father is. Right? So the children are Israelites, but the woman there was an Egyptian. So wait a minute, so he married an Egyptian, right? Let's go to Exodus 2. These are all black people, brothers and sisters. Even when you go to Sumer or where Abraham came from, what they eventually called Sumer, that was a black populace as well. But Exodus 2, it wasn't homogeneous, but it was a black populace. They even called themselves the black-headed ones. This is Exodus 2 and verse 15, because now you have Moses or Moshe come on the scene. This is many years later after Israel has grown into a mighty, well, they've increased in numbers, but they have been enslaved by a Pharaoh who rose up, who didn't know Joseph, right? And was threatened, right? Their growth was an issue of national security. So what they did, they started to oppress the children of Israel, right? Moses, who was, matter of fact, Moses, after he was born, his mother tried to hide him. Then it says, and this is Exodus 2 and verse Verse 3, it says, and when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. Okay, so she puts Moses into this, and he's floating down the river, and it says, and his sister Miriam, that's what it's talking about, stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. So now this is the daughter of Pharaoh, the one who was killing the Israelite babies. It says, and when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Okay. So you go on to read that the mother nursed him, and then he became Moses' mother nursed him, and then he became Pharaoh's daughter. But you got to think about it. Is this so? You got to think about it. He's killing all these children. Are you gonna have one that look? I mean, how you gonna blend into his house? These people look the same. Matter of fact, just let me show you that he looked just like the Egyptians, just like Joseph looked like the Egyptians. Again, the ancient Egyptians were black. So it says, what we call black. This is Exodus, the 4th chapter, in verse 6, because he eventually murders a man. Well, he kills this man who was oppressing his brother, an Israelite. And then he tried to bury him in the sand. That didn't work out too well. And he had to flee. So this is Exodus 4. And pick it up at verse, actually, not Exodus 4, Exodus 2, still stay in Exodus 2, because he flees. And in verse 1, it says, and there went him, not verse 1, excuse me, verse 16. It says, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. Well, verse 15. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, talking about when he killed that man, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Okay. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. Okay, so Moses helps them. And their father says something to them in verse 18, and when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, how is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. Now, they said an Egyptian, but the one who did it was Moses. He was a Hebrew. So if they mistook him for an Egyptian, that meant obviously that he looked like the Egyptians. Now, we understand that today, white Arabs have taken Egypt, okay? Because even when you look at the original Arabs, these were black people. There's a difference. Yeah, the original Arabs, they were black people. But that's a whole other thing. So they mistook Moses for an Egyptian. Moses, they thought, was an Egyptian. Let's go to Exodus 4, and we're going to pick it up at verse 6. Because he stays there, but then God manifests himself unto him. And he's going to send him. He's chosen him to go to Pharaoh, tell him to let his people go, to convince the people. And one of the ways in which he's going to convince the people is shown through here. And in this, you can see, if you really think about it, wait a minute, something's not right with what we've been told. This is Exodus 4 and verse 6. Okay, because he had a rod that became a serpent. That was one of the things to show he had the power of God. But then he says in verse 6, and the Lord said, furthermore unto him, put now thine hand in thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. So his hand turned white. Leprosy is a disease amongst others. Now you can see different forms of leprosy, but there's a type of leprosy that just turns your skin white. We just lose the pigmentation. Now, what kind of, okay, if you look like the people that call themselves Israelis today, generally speaking. Okay, let's say you get leprosy. So is that a real, is something, okay, man, his hand got a little whiter before? Oh, it's really something if you put your hand in your bosom, a black hand in the bosom, you pull it out and it's white. That's more of a miracle when you think about it. That's more of a miracle. Let's go to Acts, the 21st chapter. Or actually, no, let's go to Matthew, the 2nd chapter. And another thing, and Moses, one of his wives, if you wanted to argue was a poor one, I'm not even arguing that, but you know, one of his wives was an Ethiopian, right? Doesn't that mean burnt face? Right? She was from Cush. So, I mean, when you really think about these people that they're talking about, like if you look at Egypt and Israel, you got one black people oppressing another black people. They're not the same people though. But as far as how they look the same. That's like the Irish and the British. They look the same. Right? They look the same, but they are technically not the same. Okay? Let's go to Matthew. And here we want to look at the Messiah. This is Matthew, the 2nd chapter. We're going to pick it up at Matthew 2 at verse 1. It says, now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, Herod was an Idumean. It says, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. So now we read about the time when he was born, and they asked, where is he that's born king of the Jews, right? So they wanted to know about that, and that made this megalomaniac, this crazy man, Herod, fearful. It made the others fearful too, but he was afraid that his power was threatened. So what did he do? He said, hey, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to kill. He's not going to be king. He was killing family members who he thought would threaten his kingship or his throne. So it says in verse 12, and it says in verse 12, and being warned of, well, no, I'm going to skip down to verse 16. It says, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and all the coasts thereof from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So just like Pharaoh in the days of Moses was killing all the male babies, Herod was killing all the male babies, the Israelite babies, the Hebrews babies, right? These are prophets like unto Moses. Same thing happened to Moses. You can see in the Messiah. But it says something. The Messiah, let's see what he did. It says in verse 13, and when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Now this is to Joseph, his earthly father, right? Who was married to his mother. It says, an angel came to Joseph in a dream, saying, arise and take the young child, talking about Jesus, and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And when he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt. Now understand, you had other people that came in and conquered Egypt, right? You had Europeans that did it, Alexander the Great and others, and eventually, you know, you had the Arab conquest. Before the Arab conquest, you understand, right, that Egypt still remained a black populace. Okay, and you got to think about why he fled, and so Israel was always going into the interior of Africa. As I continue with this series, I'm going to teach a little bit on this Israel identity. That you see consistently that Israel was in the interior of Africa. We'll see. They even had settlements throughout Africa. We'll see that later. But let's go to Revelation and continue talking about the Messiah and to see a description of him. This is Revelation, the 1st chapter. And we're going to pick it up at verse, let's see. Revelation 1, and we're going to pick it up at verse 13. Revelation 1 and verse 13. It says, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes was a flame of fire. Okay, so now it's talking about him, and then when it says his hair was white like wool, a lot of people say that, you know, that's because his hair was like wool. I mean, white, like if you look at wool, it's like black folks' hair, right? But even if you wanted to argue that, right? Like I heard this false prophet out of, I think he out of Arizona, he a Baptist preacher. He false, but he was saying, yeah, see, it just says he's white, or the hair was white. It don't say he had, you know, hair like black people, right? Paraphrasing what he said. But then he doesn't read the next verse. See, you find that consistently through lying preachers, that they will leave things out when they know what it's saying. You see that quite a bit. So I'm gonna read it for him since he couldn't read it. And his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. So his feet were likened to as if they had been burned in a furnace. See, you look at black people, what did I say? Ethiopia, the burnt face, right? That's what the Greek came up with that, right? So, because they look quite different from them. They know, and no shame in it. But that's what he looked like. And see, people are so racist that they continually depict the Messiah as a white man. They continually depict him as a white man when that's not the case. So you have, if you think about it, you got Joseph mistaken for an Egyptian. You got Moses mistaken as an Egyptian. You got the Messiah who fled into Egypt, right, and hid. His family took him there and hid. And then he's described as a black man. You got Joseph taking a black wife. You got an Egyptian wife who was black. You got Moses, who, if you, again, I'm not even gonna argue Zipporah, right? I don't even have to. I'm not even gonna do that. But you know, in Ethiopia, what the Ethiopian look like, just to make it plain, right? Okay, we know what it means. Your skin burned like brass, as if it had been burned in an oven. Let's go to Acts, the 21st chapter, in the 37th verse. Let's see another one. So you got all these tribes. They look black. You have to ask yourself the question: who are these people over here? Unless you're talking about Beta Israel or some brothers and sisters in Demona, you're not talking about the true Israelites. They don't even have they not Israel by blood. And one thing we have to stop doing is stop. And when I say when you see Israel scattered abroad, you see like the Limba, you see Israelites all over Africa. You see one thing they want to do is be justified and acknowledged by these people who are not the children of the book, children of Israel. Who cares what they think? I'm gonna ask you again. Who cares what they think? You ain't gotta take no DNA test for them. They the ones perpetrating the fraud. I gotta make sure my DNA match up. And so, for what? We read these scriptures showing that that Israelites are black people. Why would you have to be justified by these people? You don't need them to justify you. And they go over there, they'll convert people to Judaism. You don't find Judaism in the scriptures. He gave them Torah, he gave them instruction, he gave Israel a way of life. Then you got these false hypocrites who will come on, they Israelis, if you will, and they would talk about black Israelites as if it's some other kind. Right? Foolishness. But this is Acts 21. Acts 21 and verse 37. Because here we got Paul, who was specifically from the tribe of Benjamin. Okay? He was a Benjamite. He says he's a Jew because ultimately to be a Jew or Judean meant you were of either of Judah by blood or you were of the southern kingdom. all right, which was comprised mainly of Judah and Benjamin. The 10 tribes made up the northern kingdom. Okay, so I just want to make that clear before I read this. This is Acts 21:37, because here we have Paul. Let's see what was said about him. It says, and as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? Who said, canst thou speak Greek? So he said, you can speak Greek. He said, art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness, 4,000 men that were murderers? Now I know in these Hollywood movies, they want to make Pharaoh white, and they want to make Moses white they did it with Charlton Heston. In the old movie, they show every Easter, the 10 Commandments. They did it with that King's movie recently. That's so disrespectful. And it's not accurate. But here Paul is mistaken as what? Egyptian, just like the patriarch Joseph, just like the deliverer Moses, mistaken as an Egyptian. See, there's a lot of blackness going on. Another thing, you'll see us as a people, we say, who the black people in the Bible? We're going to pick out some kind of obscure. Shoot, who the black people? Question is, who the white people? Especially you going back in the old days, and you talking about black people. Abraham was black, right? Abraham was black. The place he came from was inhabited by black people. Even if you think about Nimrod, who made Babel, which became Babylon, what was Nimrod? He was from Cush. But white supremacy is so strong that people can't acknowledge the truth. That's the scriptures. Let's look at something else. Let's look at some archaeology, if you will. So right here, you see the Lachish, or here you see in 721, 722, Israelites being taken into captivity. They got cornrows. They have cornrows. They have locks. This is from Babylon. Israelites in ancient Babylon. Now let me read something to you here. Let's just show you. This is Numbers, the 6th chapter. Numbers, the 6th chapter. I'm going to pick it up at verse 1. Numbers 6 and verse 1. It reads, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when either man or woman shall separate themselves to vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves unto the Lord. So now Israel had Nazarites, people who had made special vows to the Lord. And one of the things they had to do was this. This is verse 5. It says, all the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head, until the days be fulfilled, in the which he separated himself unto the Lord. He shall be holy, and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. So now the Nazarites had locks. What you see locks amongst people who consider black people, brothers and sisters, because their hair is more conducive to doing that. These are black people. This is Judges, one of the judges of Israel, Solomon, who was known for having something. This is Judges, I want to read just one verse, Judges 16 and verse 13. It reads, and Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. He has 7 locks in his head. They really got to think about, we read about a black people. We read about their hairs, talking about wool. Now we read about locks. Skin like burned brass. Let's go to Ezekiel, the 8th chapter. Ezekiel, the 8th chapter. We're going to read one verse here, the prophet. It says something about that happened to the prophet concerning hair. Let's read this. This is Ezekiel 8 and verse 3. Ezekiel 8 and verse 3. It says, oh, bro, I'm gonna pick it up at verse 2. It says, and I beheld in low light the likeness of the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his loins even down with fire, and from his loins even upward as the appearance of brightness as the color of amber. And he put forth the form of an hand and took me by a lock of mine head. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven. So now Ezekiel had locks. Brothers and sisters, we've been lied to. We've been lied to. Let's go to, let's see. Let's go to Lamentations 4 and see what was going on during the time of the siege, right? This is Babylon besieged Jerusalem. Jeremiah writes concerning this terrible time in verse 7, her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Okay? So now he's talking about Nazarites. Now, when he's talking about red, they say, see, he's talking about red. Don't you understand that you could be brown and red at the same time? You don't understand that? No, you don't. But nevertheless, verse 8, because it says something there. It said their visage is blacker than the coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaving to their bones. It withereth, it is withered, it has become like a stick. So now I said their skin is blacker. The skin is blacker than a coal. See, and that's because, brothers and sisters, of what was going on. Lamentations 5 goes on. It says in this prayer, oh, he's asking the Lord to remember. He says something about what was going on. He said, our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. So it even affected the people's appearance. Then it says something, they ravished the women in Zion and they're amazed in the cities of Judah, because that's what they do. People will do when they take you captive, which is what happened to our people here in this country. Let's look at a few more of these archaeology. So these are in the catacombs. These are many years later after those released. These are in the catacombs in the early, about 300 to 256 AD, excuse me. And this is a depiction of Moses. Now this is in Italy and the Hebrews. So now we understand that Moses is much older than this. But who do you see? You see black people. Because it wasn't until later that you see these white depictions of Israelites. This is it said the earliest wall painting of the Messiah. He's not white. A fresco of Christ among his disciples. He's not white, brothers and sisters. Found in the catacombs. He's not white. The disciples are not white. And the disciples were Israelites as well. Here you see a fresco of Abraham. See, why are these people of color? Here you see another one of Samson. See, we've been lied to, brothers and sisters. We've been lied to. We've been lied to. And with that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to end it there. I'll eventually pick it up probably after atonement as far as dealing with Israel more so. And it's just on my mind, just thinking I'm going to end it with this, just thinking about, again, this protest and all this foolishness, and when people are not asking the right questions, right? As opposed to how did we get in this situation in the first place? You know, because we sinned against our God. Then you look at, I wonder how long it's going to be before they stop even doing this and start doing something else. If you remember, Right before this, you saw a lot of laying in the street stopping traffic as protests, right? And before that, you saw a lot of people, you know, symbolic, everybody wearing a hoodie. I don't see too many people wearing hoodies now unless they're cold. They were wearing it, you know, because of trademark. They had Woody on doing these symbolic gestures, and I heard somebody mention today talking about this a movement. My question to you is, Negro, where are you going? Where are you? What are you moving to? Because unless you are turning back to the Most High God, it doesn't mean anything. I thank you for your time.